It's the Sean Widmer Podcast. It's a journal by someone that just really doesn't like to write.
I'm tired. It's late. Recording this podcast late on a Tuesday night. Thank you for tuning in. What do we need to talk about today on the podcast? Some shout outs. A huge shout out to somebody who got me all up in my feels, all excited up in my feels. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I felt like an expert for once in my life about something. I think I've always kind of wondered this. The show The Floor made me wonder about what I'm an expert at, and I wrestled with that a lot. We'll talk about that. Kelly's What Are You Into? That's musically related. I feel like there's been a lot of music in the Kelly's What Are You Into lately. There's another one today. I wanted to start with this though. We read the comments at the end of every episode, whether those comments are coming from Sean'sLife.com, my website where there's a comment box, Spotify. You can comment if you're listening to the episode on Spotify. You can comment on the episode. YouTube, you can comment on the YouTube video, which I need to bring it up to see if there were any comments from the last YouTube video. Was the last one with Andy? Who was the last one with? What did we just do on Monday? I called Ryan. So we'll see if there's any comments there. You can comment there. And if you're a Patreon subscriber, you can comment on Patreon. We'll get into Patreon in a second. But I need some help from the tattoo folks out there. I've wrestled with this a lot over the years. I've wrestled with it a lot on the podcast. My love of tattoos. I love them so much. When I see someone with tattoos that I enjoy, I want to ask questions about them. If you are someone who has the scattering of tattoos all over, where they're not like, I don't mind when they're all clumped together, but I have a major passion for those tattoos that are like individual pieces of artwork with room in between them. I think you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, I love tattoos. I'll always ask about them. I want to know the meaning behind tattoos. There was a girl today. I had to print some stuff up at the UPS store, and the girl who was helping had a really unique tattoo on her arm, and I wanted to know what it was, and she had designed it. Now, I finally have landed on a tattoo that I want. At least I think I want it. And this is not original by any sense of the imagination. In fact, a lot of people that I personally know have a tattoo like this. In fact, one of my very best friends, Andy, who was on the podcast last week, has a tattoo on his left arm that is a piece of artwork that his mom had done. And so when she passed away, Andy got this tattoo on his arm. This is a piece of artwork that his mom did, and I think it's really cool. I love it. I have something like that now in my life because my daughter is big time into coloring and drawing right now. There's two things she does that I would be interested in. I think the second one would be the one I'd go with. But my daughter did just learn how to spell her name in school this year. And it's really cute how she does it because it's just little kid handwriting. The letters are there. They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Her O's wander all over the place. Her O's look more like the drawing of a lake on a map as opposed to an actual circle. Her V starts off with a straight line down, and then she remembers, oh, these need to be two angled lines, so the second one is wild. But it's so cute how my daughter does her name, and I love that. But the other thing she does right now is she loves to draw people. So she's big into drawing scenery where either she's the focus of the drawing or my wife is the focus of the drawing. And what she does is she draws a circle, and that's the head, and then she draws the face, and then it gets to the part where you've got to draw the rest of the body, so you've got to draw arms and legs. And what my daughter does is right out of the side of the head, she draws two little lines, and those are the arms, and out of the bottom of the head are 2 feet. So she just skips the whole hangman middle part of the body. There's no neck, midsection, waist, any of that. It's just head with arms and legs coming out of it. They're so cute. And she draws these things all the time. And the other day she drew it, and I thought, that's it. I see this drawing so much, and I never want to forget about my daughter loving drawing these people. Why don't I take one of her drawings and get that tattooed in a smaller version on my body? So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think that's the tattoo that I am going to get. Shout out to my firstborn, Olivia. Huck, you're not going to get the same treatment. Woods, upcoming, you're probably not going to get the same treatment. Olivia's the first. I'm sorry, guys, if you're listening to this in the future. I mean, unless one of you knocks my socks off by drawing a really cool-looking basketball, I just don't think it's going to be in the cards for your artwork to end up on my body. Or maybe that's what I do. Maybe each one of my tattoos is either the kid's name when they first learned how to draw it, or write it, or the first thing they were obsessed with drawing. Maybe that's what it is. Anyways, tattoo people, is that a good idea, bad idea? I still need to know where to get it, man. This body is not getting any better. It's not getting any more tattoo friendly, right? The arms aren't going to do anything. The belly's just getting bigger. The man boobs are just getting more meatloafy. The body's just not there. And so I've got to figure out where on this busted up body you get this tattoo of my daughter's human drawing. All right, that's it. That's it for the tattoo talk today. But I needed to ask the tattoo people out there what they think. Thank you. Okay, the show The Floor, the TV show The Floor, this is something that was talked about on the podcast. I really enjoyed it. You go into this trivia contest, and you get to defend your territory. I'm not going to explain how the game works, but you defend your territory with a subject matter that you are really knowledgeable about. And people would have fast food. I felt pretty good about that one. U.S. history. Didn't feel good about that one. That's not a square I'm going to beat. And so on and so forth. What are you good at? And I remember thinking when I was watching that show, what would mine be? And I don't think this would be a category you could do, but this is where I'm the most knowledgeable. And I learned about it I learned how knowledgeable I am about it this week. The NCAA football franchise, it's probably going to be a major subject of this podcast this summer. The new game comes out late July, and I'm real excited about it. And this was I did a whole podcast on this a couple months ago, how that was such an impactful video game in my life. Super impactful. I even talked about it last episode, how impactful that game was. And on Monday's episode, I talked about the fact that there's a lot of people I've seen on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, posting about how they're ready to get back into college football and acting, like they've done it forever. Like this is their life. And I look and they're like talking about how they started playing it in 2010. I look at the people who are posting it. They've got pictures of themselves. They're 20 years old. All right. You weren't even really alive playing video games when this game really took off. So anyways, I kind of played gatekeeper this week, and I don't really love that. But finally, this is a world where I can do that because I don't have a world like that. I think I mentioned, let's see, I talk about Weezer a lot, a band I love forever. I mentioned this the other day. I didn't get into their first album until it had already been out for 4 or 5 years, right? I'm not a day one taker-inner of the Weezer music. It took me a while to catch up to it. And so as much as I say I'm like their day one, I wasn't their day one. I think Pinkerton had already come out by the time I got into Weezer's Blue album, their debut album. So as much as I want to be the gatekeeper for Weezer, I'm sort of a poser. Well, college football, I'm not. I'm there day one. I know some people were hitting me up this week. They're like, we had Bill Walsh football. I'm the real. Okay. Now, that's ridiculous. Early 2000s is when that franchise really got going. 2002 is probably the game that really signifies the beginning of the college football as a game that was here. The games before that were 2000, 2001. I had them. They were good. But as someone who had them, knowing they were good, when PS2 came out with the graphics they had and everything they did, that was kind of when the run of dominance of college football started. Anyways, I say all this to say, I had made a comment on Monday's podcast about the fact that if you're a real OG to that series, you knew that one of the options with your game, you wanted to have the real names. The game didn't come with real names. There was no NIL at the time, so they couldn't use the players' names in the college football video game. That was illegal. That was a violation. So everyone just had their jersey number, right? It would have been, I forget what number. I'm trying to think of a player from 2002. I can't think of one. It was Jason Gesser number 4, like Jason Gesser 4. I think that's about right. Anyways. You would just see their jersey number and their position. And so it was a big deal to get the players' names in there. So I had mentioned the fact on Monday that there was an option where there was guys who would get the name files. They'd have the whole 117 teams available in the game. They'd have every team's roster filled out top to bottom. Okay? And I'd mentioned that if you're like the OG, if you knew you'd send your memory card to them in $5 and they would send it back with the roster file on it. And immediately all I got back was people going, I did my roster files myself. I did it myself. I named everyone myself. Okay, yeah, we all did. We all did. Everyone pre-internet, when you could just download the name file, everyone edited the names to themselves or by themselves to an extent. Nobody, even the people who are on like my TikTok and Instagram telling me I did all of them, you're liars. One year, we tried to name as many teams as we could in college football. In 3 weeks, now we weren't doing it 24/7, but in all of our free time when we could have been playing the game, in 3 weeks, I remember we did over 80 teams. That means that we were still about 40 teams away from finishing the entire roster. It took us over 3 weeks. And that was probably not even fully edited rosters. So all these people who are telling me they did it, they didn't. They didn't even try. They probably did a conference or a handful of teams for all the good players. You got to have the full roster. That was the point of it. Yeah, the real diehards were on the Operation Sports message boards. They're at the Madden Mania message boards. You know, there's a lot of people out there this week who are like, "Oh no, we're OGs." You might have been OGs, but like the diehards of us, we were on the forums looking at sliders. I need to get some people on to talk about this. I've over talked about it now. But what I wanted to bring up was the fact that through all this, someone who used to be on the one of the guys who edited the rosters reached out to me and said thank you for the shout out, because back in the day he was one of the guys who you would send the memory card to and he would send it back, and he just was like, he sent me a message that was like, what a blast from the past, thanks for the shout out to those of us who did that for a couple summers and made some money editing the rosters. And I responded, how did you do it? Because I know how long it took to edit them. And what these guys would do on PS2, they had an adapter that you would plug the memory card into, then plug that into a PC. The PC would read the files on the PS2 memory card, and they were able to access the database that had the rosters on the file with the rosters. They were able to access that database on their computer and then edit all of the names with a keyboard, which saves you, 20, 30, 40, 50 times faster, maybe more than that. Because on PlayStation, you had to edit the names by selecting the player, selecting the name, using the controller to move your cursor around. Sean Widmer, you had to go select the S, go select the E, go select the A, go select the N. Then when you hit save on that name, it wasn't like it just saved it and you were on to the next one. It was PS2. It took a moment for the name to save, and then, now you could go and choose the last name, do that. It was a process, and these guys are just typing as fast as they could through all the roster names. So that's how they did it. They had a device that let them plug it into their computer and edit the names. We've talked about this too much now. I apologize. I just felt good because this week I had that moment where all these people were coming at me about college football, and I realized, I actually know more about this than most people. Whether that's good or not, I don't know. It's probably not great. And it was fun. A lot of the guys I got in discussions with, eventually it came out, they're like, well, we started playing in 2008. I'm like, yeah, see, I'm talking about in 2002. And the response was the same from everyone. They're like, I was 4 or 5. I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, man. Like those of us who were adults, early 20s, playing college football back in the early 2000s, like we're old now, we get that, but this is like a passionate thing for us. That I love that you have passion for the franchise, but you're too young to know like the old school mentality of approaching that game, and the amount of notebooks that I had of stats and the Excel files I have keeping track of career stats for players. More on that at some point. I don't know what is this podcast? Hi. Thank you for listening. The shout-outs that I wanted to give are meaningless now because those people have stopped listening, so thank you. Because I wanted to give a shout-out to someone who subscribed to the Patreon. We've had some Patreon people sign up in the last week, which is super awesome. Thank you for supporting this podcast. People who like it, who enjoy it, and who feel like, the podcast gives you enough entertainment over the course of a month to become a supporter of it, that means a lot. It means a lot. I try to make sure there is enough content out there each month that is enjoyable, unlike the last 5 minutes, that give you, a smile in your day, make you laugh, make you think, whatever it might be. And that the people who support it, that means so much to me. And I'd given some shout outs like Dylan and Grant last episode, but the name that popped up this week, I was like, what? And I don't know if you have this moment in your lives. I don't know if you can look back in your lives when you're a kid and you look at people who were older than you, and it's like they were idolized. They were legends. One of those names for me is this guy Camilo. Camilo, why am I not saying your name right? Camilo he had it going on. I would have been a first grader, and Camilo would have been maybe eighth or ninth grader. And he was just cool, right? He was cool. He looked cool. He was a great soccer player. All the girls loved him, And as I got older, I realized that it's like, oh, you want to date Dirce da Silva? You probably could. You probably could. You want to date? Well, I'm trying to look back at the girls who were in high school when I was in like fifth grade that I would think like, oh my goodness, they're supermodels. It's like if you were the good looking girl in school, Camilo was the dude. And I always thought he was so rad. And then like he moved to the States and he stayed cool and he's just going to be cool forever. And that's just how he is. And he subscribed to the podcast. And I was like, what? He subscribed to support the podcast and sent like a nice comments that he listens to the podcast and liked hearing my mom and dad on it and stuff. And so that was a weird moment for me. So thank you for supporting, Camilo. You're super cool to me. So the fact that you even listen to this makes me very nervous right now and makes me feel like I'm sorry I wasted 5 minutes of your time talking about video games. I got to talk about much cooler stuff than that. I got to up the ante because I know people that I think are cool are listening. So, well, yeah, I don't know how I'm gonna maneuver these waters now that I'm nervous. You've got me nervous, Camilo. Anyways, he was awesome. So shout out to him. Shout out to the cool kids from back in the day. That's a weird thing to think about. That when I was little, I thought people were cool. Chico Schloneker, Camilo, and I'm 42 years old and I'm still like, yeah, they're really cool. That might mean that I was a complete dweeb growing up.
Kelly's, what are you into?
We got to talk music. My wife does this from time to time, and I love her for it. So my wife works in the music industry, and there's a lot of times that she will approach me with a song that one of her artists sings, and my wife knows I don't really like country music. So she'll approach me with a song, and she's like, oh, this artist that I work with, they've got a new song out. What do you think about it? And I can tell, like, when she tells me, she knows that I'm good. I won't love the song, but I know that she's asking me to put on my country music listening hat and listen to a song and give her honest feedback about it. But with the rose-colored glasses that I worked in country music for a long time, so I kind of understand what works and what doesn't work in that music world and what listeners liked, right? Not based on how I feel about the song, but based on what kind of songs I knew people requested and when we would send out music surveys. And people would be like, I don't like this kind of song. I like this kind of song. So I will try to help Ann out with that. But occasionally, she'll come up to me, and a lot of times it's not a country song. It's a song maybe she heard, got off TikTok, or maybe she heard on a Peloton ride or whatever, wherever she's consuming non-music that she does day-to-day for work. Every now and then she'll come up to me. She's got a little glimmer in her eye, and she'll say, hey, I got a song for you. And she doesn't miss on these. And she hit me with one this week, and I was like, you dirty rat. So she had told me about Shabuzi a while ago, that, what is it, Tipsy in the bar? I forget what the Shabuzi. If you type in Shabuzi, it's his number one song right now. It's really good. It's play off the Jaquan song back in the day. So it's a great song. Very fun. She knew I would like it. Well, she comes in the other day. She goes, have you heard the new Hardy song? And Hardy is a guy who was in country music. He wrote music with Morgan Wallen and wrote a bunch of songs with Morgan, is very good friends with Morgan, one of Morgan's like best friends in the industry. And they're always together. They tour, Hardy opens for Morgan Wallen on his big tour. So it's, he's big time. Well, he kind of has gone away from country music a little bit, as much as he can, because his voice is he's got such an accent, and he's dove into the rock world. And Anna knows that I've got a past where there's a chunk of my life where Chevelle dominated my eardrums, and I needed a little bit of that, a little bit of anger in my music. And so she came in the other day and goes, "Have you heard the new Hardy song?" I go, "No. What? I'm out of the country music world. What's going on?" She goes, "It's not country. It's his rock stuff." I go, "Okay, I'm listening." She goes, "Go listen to the song Psycho." And I'm like, "All right, I can do this." She's like, "You're going to love it." And I could tell when she said it, this was loving wife who knows her husband well. This was going to be a good one. And sure enough, it is not safe for work. It is NSFW. It's got all the words in it, but it is a rock song by Hardy that is so stinking catchy. The chorus or the verses are pretty good. The chorus is solid. The chorus ends with a great rock scream by Hardy. And then right after that, it hits such a good musical break. Whatever the guitar is doing in sort of this section of music that is, I asked my brother Travis if it was called a guitar riff. We don't think it's called a guitar riff. He said, I forget what he said. It was something like, I think it was like a musical interlude or something like that. Anyways, it's so catchy. I can't get enough of it. So I'm in. Hardy's new song, Psycho. Listen to it, but go in knowing that it's rock. Go in knowing you might hear a word you don't want your kids to hear. And that's where I'm at. Sort of chasing that old 2000s, I need a little Chevelle in my life to fire me up. Let's do some comments. Let's get out of here. Still nervous that Camilo listens to this. It's a big name for me. All right. Off of Sean'sLife.com. Ron, he sent this comment in. Love Ron. Ron said, "I did the 50-hour slam last year." He did not cough. That was me editorializing. He said, "I did the 50-hour slam last year, and our team got second place from the judges, and we won best editing. It was kind of unfair since a couple friends on my team work in the industry and worked on Z Nation and a lot of movies filmed in Spokane. It was a lot of fun, but a very exhausting weekend, LOL. Ron, did they work for North by Northwest? Is that the company that does all that? That's really cool. But Ron, okay, so I hope that came through with Ryan. He and I did the 48-hour film festival when we did ours together, and that was a lot more casual, kind of more of anyone was in that one. And I think Ryan even alluded to the fact the 50-hour slam, that was where my buddy Davin, he would do those, and Davin was like a professional film guy. And that was, if you stepped into the octagon for the 50-hour slam, you needed to be ready to fight for your life because it was going to be tough sledding. So coming in second from the judges is really impressive. Best editing is super impressive. My buddy Andy informed me he didn't win Best Actor in the 50-hour slam. I believe he's lying because he was the best actor. So I don't know how anyone could say otherwise. Let's go to Spotify, where Yvonne said this: "I listen to music on Pandora with ads. Great hearing from Ryan and listening about films you did. You need to ask Ryan for some money for the If movie. I need to ask Ryan Reynolds for some money for the If movie. I'm telling you, that's our idea. Dang it. But we don't look like Ryan Reynolds and John Krasinski. And we're not as good at making projects as they are. It's just the reality of it. This one came in from, I believe this is one of Camilo's classmates back in the day. Keith, this might be from Keith. K and S Nosker. I believe this is Keith. Keith, you terrified me as a kid. Let me just throw that out there. I thought you were really cool, but you scared the living pants off me. I always felt like there was a noogie coming my way or a swirly or something. All right? I didn't feel nervous around Camilo. I felt nervous around you. Keith said, "Dude, this is a quote from my dad. My dad had asked a question on his podcast. Do those kids listen to this?" When referring to the Keith Noskers of the world. And he said, "Do those kids listen?" Tim Widmer. "Yes, Mr. Widmer. Today I listened. So great to hear Uncle Tim chuckle and Aunt Leslie's sweet voice. They are the best. I agree with you. I love them. I love hearing their voices. It was so good having them in town. What a blessing they are to this world." Tim and Les. What a great couple. Come back to Lexington and watch my kids. Thank you. Okay, that's it for today. 25 minutes of who knows what. Friday, my buddy Jeremy's coming on. He'll be the Patreon guest this weekend. I'm excited to get into his eardrums. One of my nearest and dearest friends. One of the people I love talking to on a pretty much daily basis. And we'll put him on the podcast, nerd out a little bit, and scare off the Camilos, right? I mean, there's a Camilo out there who's going, oh, man, this is not as cool of a podcast as I thought it was. Thanks for listening.